Okay, well, good to see everybody this morning. I left on December 1st to go to Asia, kind of talked about that, what our plan was in Okinawa and Vietnam. And, the team was, we had Don Melanowski from Great Falls, Charlie and Denya from Bozeman, had Oleg Zelenin from Belarus. One of the other brethren in Montana supported Oleg to be able to go with us. On that trip, we met Bach and Michelle in Vietnam as well. Just Don and Charlie and Denya and I went to Okinawa. And I think before I left, didn't know exactly what we might accomplish there. See, Charlie and Denya host Okinawan students every year. There's some sort of arrangement between Bozeman with Montana State University in Bozeman with Okinawa. And so when the kids come for 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it is, they have to have a place to stay, so they look for host families. And they've done that for some years, and of course the students always get pretty excited and have a great time, and then they say, oh, please come to Okinawa and see us and meet our families, and so they've kind of wanted to do that. So with the Vietnam trip coming up, they thought, what's the chance that we could kind of go that way, stop there, see these Okinawan families? But what turned out to be a real blessing was the contact with the Americans stationed there, military, on the base. Denya kind of set that up through a contact with someone else that is from the Bozeman congregation. What's her name? I think Jennifer something. It used to be Rigers. She's married to a Marine officer and out east at I think at Cherry Point or New River Air Station. He's in the Air Wing. Anyway, long story short, they met this other couple that's now in Okinawa. The guy's a gunnery sergeant, Marine, and his wife. And man, are they on fire for the word. I mean, Phil Sutton is the preacher there over in Bozeman. And Phil Skypes with them. So they're really tracking on spiritual things. And they were really pumped when we were able to go there. Charlie and Denya actually stayed with them. Me and Don stayed on Camp Courtney at a guest, they call it like a guest house. It's a hotel on the military base. And we had some great studies with the gunny. And they were really excited about us coming back and following up. So I can just see the hand of the Lord in that. And the Okinawan families were great as well. And some of the Okinawan students came to the Bible study. So, real positive. Weren't there very long. We left on the 6th of December out of Okinawa. But I was able to speak at the church there. Johnny used to attend at the Chobani Church of Christ in Okinawa. So I got a chance to give the message there. Well received. The people pretty excited about that, enjoyed that. I think they want us to come back as well. So, Lord willing, I got a feeling that's going to happen. So we'll work on that. But we left there on December 6th and headed for Hanoi. That's the capital of Vietnam. We've got contacts there with Dr. Fung for years now, and went to the Peace Village, to the handicapped kids school there. She's not the director anymore. She's actually retired from there, but we have a great relationship with her. And that's what we're doing, is laying that in and building that relationship, including with her family. Her oldest son was down in Saigon on some sort of business thing, And when we were down there, he met with us, went out to dinner with us on a couple occasions. A great young guy. So building that relationship there with Dr. Fung. We met the new director, a guy named Min. He's a medical doctor there at the Peace Village. So working on the relationship with him there as well. And I had Brother Min come up. We flew him up from Saigon with Mr. Koo, my interpreter, because Min had a group of people to come together to study in Hanoi. So we did do Bible study in Hanoi, and that went very well. In fact, one of the ladies there was immersed after the study. We left Hanoi and on the 9th headed on down to Nha Trang. Nha Trang is where this Mr. Phuc is at. Mr. Phuc is that guy I told you guys about before. He has buried over 10,000 fetuses, aborted babies. You know, that's just a story that just blows the mind. It just offends the sensibilities here to be thinking about this guy getting these dead fetuses because he believes they are worthy of a proper burial. I've never seen anything like it. And as we mentioned before, you know, we met him last year. This guy felt he had to do more, so he was interceding and talking with women coming to the clinics and asking them if they were going to keep their babies. And many said no, they were too poor, they couldn't feed it, or whatever the reason was. And he said, give the baby to me, and I will take care of it. So last year, he had told us he'd saved 160 children that he had in 3 different makeshift orphanages. Now, I've been in a lot of orphanages, but to be in an orphanage when all the children are supposed to be dead just blows my mind. So last year, I had the bag of dresses from our ladies here and Tom, that great ministry they have. And I gave that guy all them dresses last time, and that's what I did this time. This time, thanks to the ladies, I also had boys' clothes because this guy's got boys and girls. And none of them are over 12 years old. I mean, because that's, you know, how long he's been doing this. But I asked him, I said, what are you up to now as far as saved lives? 200 children. This guy is saved, and they call him Daddy. I mean, it's just, I don't know what to say about it. It's just such a, what he's doing, and he took us to the graveyard where he buries them every day, the fetuses that he has. And he showed us he had some he was getting ready to do. The one graveyard he took us to had 3,000. You know, it just blows your mind. You know, the guy reminds me of Oscar Schindler, whether you've ever seen the movie Schindler's List. During World War II, it's a true story, the guy ran a factory, and he was using Jewish prisoners to be workers. He started to realize that, you know, what was happening, they're killing all these people. And he had to train these Jews to do the work he was doing. Nazis wanted to show up and take his workers and go gas them or something. He's like, wait a minute. I got a war effort here, you know, I need these people. And he started buying them, paying for them. And the guy really wasn't that much of a real moral kind of a guy, but this really got to him. He felt he had to do something. They say that Oscar Schindler saved about 1,200 Jews. And they never forgot that. He's buried with honors in a Jewish cemetery over there in Israel that they never bury a Gentile in. Well, they did him. And in 2012, the estimate was that there's 8,500 people alive today because of the 1,200 Oskar Schindler saved. I feel like I've just met a modern day Oskar Schindler with Mr. Fook in Vietnam. Because if this guy keeps saving babies and these kids grow up and then they have babies, one day there's going to be thousands of people alive because of this common man. It just blows your mind. Just a simple guy that he is. And he had some pregnant gals there waiting to have their babies, because he tells them, if you stay here and you have the baby, I'll take care of it. Now, about a third of them, the mothers came back and said, can I have my baby back? He hands them to them. Sure, here you go. Just unbelievable. The guy's smart, too. He says, I tell the women, he said, doctors send them to me now. The doctor's woman wants to have this procedure. They say, you need to talk to a guy first. He talks to him at the place where he has kids. Makes him sit there and watch the kids run around. He talks to him. Then he says, I'll take the baby on one condition. You have to help me here. He said, I need you to feed it right after it's born. I'm looking at him like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. They feed that baby, they breastfeed that baby, they ain't likely going to let it go. It's just incredible what this guy has done. He isn't looking for any attention. Doesn't want his name up in lights. And he names all the dead ones. That's what blows your mind. He's got little name tags. They're all in rows, and he gives them Bible names. He names them. So we went back there. I mean, he's kind of a hard guy to forget. So we gave him the dresses and the little boy clothes. And we said, do you need anything else? Well, he needed about 21 mattresses, because he's, got little beds for the kids. And so we gave him the cash to go buy, went to the store, got the mattresses for the beds for some of the kids there. So that was in Nha Trang. Then we headed down to Saigon to meet with An the Dong. He goes by John. He likes John. So he goes by John Dong, but I don't think he thinks I can pronounce An the Dong. So, but we had Bible study. He had about, 15 people we had in there for 2 days. Basically all day. Start about 8:30 in the morning, have a lunch break, and then hit her again, and go to about 3:30. You got to try to get back on the road. Saigon is just so crowded. You go after 3:30 trying to get anywhere, you ain't going nowhere. It's just a parking lot. Just thousands and thousands of these little motorbikes, and actually more cars now, and everyone was blown away by the most creative ways you see people haul stuff on motorbikes. I don't know if you guys seen Don's picture of that dog driving that motorbike. It's a funny picture. That poodle sitting right up there, hands on the handlebars, man, like he knows what he's doing. The guy's in the back. You got to look close. He's really not driving. He's parked. And Don saw that dog sitting on that like that and took a picture of it. But I seen a guy one time, man, he was decked out like a Christmas tree with these little baggies, clear plastic baggies with goldfish in them. Just all these bags all over them with goldfish flying down the road. There'll be a guy in the back holding a full-size door or plate glass for a conference table. Guys with long re-rod over their shoulders or ladders driving through crowded traffic on a motorbike. And it's like, look at what they're doing. It's just, but it's, necessity. Necessity. These guys are survivors, man. This is life. This is what you got to do. It's unbelievable. Well, anyway, we were at John's place, did Bible studies for 2 days in Saigon with his group. And then we headed on down to Vung Tau. Now, Daniel left on the 15th. When we went to Vung Tau, she actually went home. She could only be gone 2 weeks. And we headed over there. Now, Vung Tau was the place I told you guys that we tried to do that place before with like 50 people in the Bible study, and the government found out about it, and we had to get out of there in a great big hurry. And men ended up in the police station being interrogated about the meeting, what was the meeting all about, who paid for it, blah, blah, blah. So men had mentioned before I left that, you know, the people were disappointed that we didn't get a chance to have that meeting, and they really wanted to do it again. And so I said, well, if you think we can, and he did. So anyway, we headed to Vung Tau again. He had a different place to meet at it's kind of a resort town. There's a lot of foreigners there, and that's one reason why he liked to do that there, because he said we wouldn't stick out so much. But he had rented a nice big, a 2 or 3 story building. It's like they had all these they had rooms and mattresses on the floor. We had like 40 people there. So we had a great fellowship and Bible study for 2 full days there at that place in Vung Tau. And the people really were tracking. I really, really appreciated the encouragement, because, you know, I know you guys know, you know, what we teach here. There are certain things that people do need to know fundamentally about the scriptures, about the church, the basics. You got to have that stuff. You got to have the foundational stuff to bring people to a decision for Christ, to be born again, you know, those basics. And then there's certain things about the organization of the church, you know, whether it be with elders and deacons and, you know, the various roles and, you know, and some of those shadows unpackaged in the sense of the necessity of the Old Testament sacrifices, and the priest that could administer it so that it makes sense to us about the sacrifice now of Christ and how these things are ministered to, you know, for our sake, you know, the blood shed applied on the propitiation, the mercy seat. Details. You do need a working understanding of those things, knowledge. But then we got to get into the power verses. We need to bring out the things that make it relevant for today. Now, when I mean today, I don't mean 2017. I mean our today and tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, and what it's all about, what people's expectation. I'm a Christian now, so what does that mean? What about this gift of the Holy Spirit? That and $1.50 get you a cup of coffee at the truck stop. How is it relevant to me today? What is the Holy Spirit all about? What's God's eternal purpose? Is my life significant? Do I have meaning? Why am I here? All those questions. That's the kind of thing I go over with those folks. I want to be encouraging to them. It's not really being taught, brother, and I'll tell you that right now. I know that for a fact. You guys know it too. The Church of Christ has got more divisions than Carter's got liver pills, man. I'm telling you, over the stupidest things in the whole world, and nothing about what it's really all about. The things life-changing. Transformation, renewing of the mind, a whole new potential, no longer in the flesh but in the Spirit. If indeed the Spirit of God dwell in you, and if people don't have the Spirit of Christ, they're not His. Romans 8, verses 8 and 9. Now these things have to be understood. If we're going to have victory in this battle, this great battle that rages, Paul said we're not fighting flesh and blood here, but principalities, rulers, a spiritual host of wickedness in heavenly places. We got to put on the whole armor of God, he said in Ephesians 6, starting in verse 10. What's this helmet for? It's helmet of salvation, a breastplate of righteousness, loins girt with the truth, feet prepared with the gospel of peace, and the shield of faith and the sword of the Spirit to do what? Go church? All that armor to go to church? That's exactly the same way I preach it over there too, by the way. And guess what? They get that. I've said this before, and it's always just a great opportunity to experience it. And I tell the Vietnamese the same thing I tell the Belarusians, the same thing I tell you guys here when I'm up front, that this proves it's from God. I don't change one word of what I just said. I say it exactly the same way. I do not try to find some way to make this culturally more acceptable. I think Godwin would agree with me that he does the same thing. I've heard him speak. I understand what he's saying. He's not trying to have to figure out how to put this in some cultural term for us as Americans to understand what he's trying to say. Now, only God could have done that, to make a one-size-fit-all, a message that would resonate. And I emphasize the fact to the Vietnamese that this information isn't from America. I am, but it's not. This is from the Middle East, and it's thousands of years old. And just as relevant today as it was when it was written thousands of years ago. It's not about culture, it's about people and God, the human heart. Our hope, light and darkness, and great struggle and victory. That's what the book's all about. And you don't have to, all you need is a good interpreter. You got to have a good interpreter. I like Mr. Koo, but even Michelle, Bach's wife, now Bach and Michelle going to come down here on New Year's Eve. They want to be here. They've been down here before. But Michelle came to the studies, a couple of them, not all of them. They're very interested but she listened to Mr. Koo, and she told me later, she said, Steve, what you were saying was very powerful, but Mr. Koo cannot bring that out like you do. And even though he says it fast, he's on it, he doesn't give me that deer in the headlights and want me to repeat all the time. I've had interpreters like that, and I realize they don't get it. Nikolai Balbutsky told me one time, after listening to Oleg interpret for me, he said, Steve, he is really good. He is, because Nikolai understands English very well, and he listened to Oleg translate that into Russian. He said he is bringing it out exactly what you're saying. And another interpreter, Victoria, was there, and she told me later, she said, my goal would be one day to interpret as Oleg does. I know you might be listening to this, Oleg, so I'm building you up here, buddy. But it's a fact. All you need is a real good interpreter. Now, Mr. Koo really is pretty good, but this was kind of funny. Of course, going through the Bible study, and the team was there, and I was talking about the radical transformation, just really how radical it is in the New Testament of a new creation in Christ Jesus. And you've heard me use this illustration before, from caterpillars to butterflies. That's how radical it is. You know what a caterpillar is, you know what a butterfly is. And boy, that's a big difference, And so I was wanting to make that point, and I looked at Mr. Koo, and I don't know why, but I did ask him. I said, you do know what a caterpillar is, right? He looked at me and he says, yes, a bulldozer. And it was so funny. I don't know why I asked him. He didn't look like he was confused, but he said that with such confidence. Yes, a bulldozer.
Actually, Steve, the comparison still works.
You know what? That's what I said. I said, you know what? That would still work because that's what we're like. We are thick, man. We got a forehead like flint, according to the Bible, which means sparks fly off it. So, heavy, dull, and just plowing through life. I thought, bulldozer works. As compared to a butterfly. Well, that was funny. But sometimes you got to ask to make sure they do understand what you're talking about. So, but we went on from Vung Tau down to Canto. Now, Canto, we had scheduled some study time, but then, they told us before I left they were going to have to back off because the authorities come down on them. They got busted. They were doing some Bible study with people that came down from Singapore. So we thought, well, okay, well, let's just wait and see. Well, anyway, long story short, we was able to have study with I had men come down, Mr. Koo was there, and their wives, but in my hotel room is where we did it. I had about 10 people in there for the Bible study there. We did it in Canto. Couldn't have the preachers come down. They said they're watching them, so they didn't want the preachers to come up to the hotel. So I just had some of the people. I had Mrs. Fong and Lynn, some of that I've mentioned before. We baptized Mrs. Fong a few years ago. But also our contacts there, which is Mrs. Fong and Lynn, they needed help with a project to feed 100 families. Very, very poor people. They wanted food baskets put together. We had about $800 into that, and it was about 2-hour drive, 2.5 hours out in the boonsticks to these poor people. But they were so appreciative. Lord willing, if I can, I asked Deej, because I know he's got something planned, but if I could maybe get 15 minutes to just give some highlights of that with some pictures. What I'm telling you, I can show you some pictures of what we were able to do. Show you the pictures of the poor folk in the food baskets. We also went to the orphanage there in Canto, where the former director that we had quite a relationship with, good lady, she got electrocuted, I think, a year and a half ago or something. They got another girl, what am I talking about? She's a Buddhist nun. They're girls. But anyway, she's the director, nice lady. We gave them some support to buy soap, toothpaste and stuff for the kids, some hygiene items, a couple $100 worth of that. And also then we went to a blind association down there in Canto. Lynn's brother is blind. I think they said chicken pox or something, and he was about 3 or 4 years old, went blind. So they're asking for some help in upgrading their facility where they make brooms. The blind people can make simple things with their hands. They make brooms, sometimes toothpicks. They just use this thing. It's sharper than heck. I don't know what. They're making toothpicks, and I'm thinking they're going to cut their fingers off with that. Of course, they're doing it in the dark, but they don't need lights because they're blind. So they wanted to upgrade their facility that they make their brooms in because it's just tin. They needed something a little bit more substantial, and I think somebody told me walking across that a typhoon or a hurricane is hitting Vietnam, like today, I think, or something, real soon. Them storms are pretty tremendous. And the people that live in them little flimsy houses don't stand a chance. But anyway, so we will look into following up with that to maybe help provide some support so they can upgrade their facility because what they put in there, what I call a white paper, it's just a page and a half on 8.5 by 11. It's a statement of what they want to do, and what they want to accomplish, and the cost. And they did a real good job in putting that together. And they said this is for these disabled people to have, to be productive. That's a key thing with people with disabilities. In some places, they still just warehouse people with disabilities. What a waste. People with disabilities, depending on what their disability is, and what you need to do is find what they can do. A blind person can be very high functioning, they're quite incredible, actually, what they can do without sight, given tasks, or people that cannot hear. Or can't walk. Doesn't mean something's wrong with their mind that they can't work. You got to get them access into the building, into a toilet or something like that. And I really appreciate America, what we did maybe now, I don't know if it's 30 years ago, ADA, Americans with Disabilities. That was a great thing. And yet some countries to this day in 2017 don't get that. And costs a whole lot more to warehouse these people. Why not get them productive? And that's what the Blind Association is asking for. They want their people to do something, to work. They want to work, and they can work. They just need somebody to give them that hand up, give them that opportunity. And that's, anyway, that's just we're all disabled to some extent, right? And God sees us and our value and that we can accomplish something. He doesn't give us any more than what we can handle, but we've got stuff to do, and we need to get on with it. We need to discover what our abilities are in light of our disabilities, whatever that is. We're not all the same, but God is able to work with us, and we can be highly successful and accomplish many things, great things for the kingdom's sake. And so we got to see ourselves that way and other people as well, and engaging with them. The Bible specifically says helping the orphan and the widow because they're so vulnerable, both testaments. And I told you before that Exodus 22:22 will blow your hair back when he says, if you afflict that orphan or that widow in any way, God said, they cry out to me, I'll surely hear, and then I'm going to go to wrath on you, he said, with the sword, and your wives will be widows, and your children will be orphans. Yowzers. He's not kidding. Yowzers don't translate very well either, I found out. That brought Mr. Koo to a halt. I said yowzers one time in the thing, and he was like, so, but the vulnerable, which are the disabled people as well. It's not just orphans and widows, but the disabled can use our help. So, but it's got to start with our own mind and accepting the fact and seeing them as needing that help. And I appreciated the Blind Association putting that down, is that was their goal, is to make their people productive because they want to be. And that's a great thing. And with the Vietnamese too, even with helping the poor people, we provided the food baskets, but they gave everyone, their little association that helps the poor, they were giving them $5 per family. Now that's $500. But I like that, and even the bridges that we built down there. We did that with a joint effort with the Vietnamese local government. Granted, we paid the larger part of the cost, but they had skin in the game, and that's the way this needs to be. Even with our faith, we've talked about that, I guess, even over in our meeting this morning, that we have our part to play. God He does the heavy lifting, but we've all got things to be doing too, and we need to demonstrate our faith by our works and our involvement in the kingdom and kingdom building. So, but anyway, Lord willing, on on New Year's Eve, maybe I'll show some pictures about what we were able to accomplish. And I want to thank all of you so much because you gave quite a sum of money. Because those meetings cost. Because I pay to have the folks, be able to come. Men had those folks coming from different places in Vietnam to be at Vung Tau. It takes food, it takes the rental of that building. But for 40 people, I was asking Sue because I couldn't remember what you ladies paid to do like a thing at Lake Michigan for a weekend. Was it $500, $600, $700 or something to rent the house? Well, that's what it costs, and we have 40 people. But in one location, it was a great opportunity for the folks. But none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for the support of the congregation that made that happen. And to pay to have men fly up to Hanoi and bring Misty Koo. Now, granted, those domestic tickets aren't all that much, maybe $70 or something like that. But you start adding all that stuff up and dealing. We Bible studied with 70 plus people over the course of 4 different locations. And that's pretty intensive Bible study. So it couldn't have happened if it wasn't for the support of the congregation, and I thank you for that. So, okay, I guess that's probably what I have for you today to kind of update you on the trip. It was very successful, and all the team members, that was the first time to Vietnam for those guys. Charlie and Daniel had been to Belarus before. It was the first time for Don. And he really, really enjoyed it. And I had a great time spending the time with Don. You know, we go all the way back to high school. We went in the Marine Corps together. And so it was a real blast from the past to spend that kind of time with him. And a good time had by all. Bach is stuck in the airport right now in Saigon due to weather in Korea. His flight's delayed, last I heard, till 2:30. Which is 2:30 in the morning. It's midnight in Saigon right now, 1:15, and he texted us and said that he was stuck. Can't get into Korea. He'll probably miss his flight into Chicago, so he won't be home. Well, he wasn't supposed to get home till Christmas, and that's tomorrow. And so we told him, "Oh, okay, man, we're praying for you. Good luck." So anyway, all right. Well, as we already said in announcements, we won't assemble tonight, and Kathy's going to go ahead and put that word out just in case we missed anybody. Blaine's going to let Frank know, and I think we'll have it covered. Everyone have a great time, great Christmas Eve, Christmas Day with your families, friends, or whatever you're going to do. So God bless you, and Lord willing, we'll see you New Year's Eve. Be down here, and we'll have a great time, 5:30. And bring in the new year. Any other last-minute thoughts, announcements? Okay, if not, let's stand. We'll be dismissed with a word of prayer.